So this episode truly did remind me why I love Rurouni Kenshin so much. And it's so weird to me because with this rebooted series, I think this is the first time I've ever watched like a remake of an anime series, going through for the first time after seeing the original version, because the only other instance I can think that this happened was with Hunter x Hunter. But with that one, I saw the 2011 version, before I watched the 90s version. So it's so weird and like surreal seeing these scenes play out and seeing the exact same moments happen but in a different way, because like the 90s version I've watched dozens of times, so I can even remember the exact shots, I can remember the music, I can remember exactly the layout of the scenes. And because they're adapting the manga up to this point and it hasn't deviated yet, this is like the same but different. It's just a very surreal experience seeing like the same thing but in a different way. But this was going to be a very, very important episode of this new anime series for Kenshin, because this is where this shit gets kind of real. This is a very important episode for what it means for Kenshin's character, for Kenshin and Kaoru's dynamic, and also fighting the first kind of real antagonist of the series. Now, if you watch this through, I'm assuming watching this review, you've already watched the episode, so obviously spoilers. This enemy that he faces, Janae Udo, is not an overall arcing, multiple spanning episodes kind of villain. He does only show up for 2 episodes before he is killed off. And if you're wondering, if you are new to Kenshin, there's a couple things I want to say about that. Eventually, there are going to be antagonists that last for entire arcs or probably an entire season. There are going to be like huge, big enemies and antagonists that show up. Some of the best written in shonen, in my opinion. Can't wait till we get to that. You know exactly who I'm talking about if you're a Kenshin fan. You know who I'm talking about. But there are villains like this with Janae that are, their story is kind of done within a couple of episodes, but it serves a very specific purpose to the story. It serves a purpose for Kenshin's character. And, you also have to take a step back and look at this series being in like, these are not fights that are going to take like, multiple dozens of episodes to cover one singular fight. Really, these are characters that are sword fighting, and sword fights are usually over pretty quickly. Kenshin does something where I think it's very unique with its fights, where it doesn't really have a power system per se, but what it usually does is slow the fights down to a point where it really exaggerates the physics of what's happening, like the physicality of what's happening. How do you anticipate this movement? How do you dodge this attack? What is happening to the sword in this instance? How does it move within the air? Like, there's a lot of instances where the fights in Kenshin are literally happening within the span of like 3 seconds, but it's slowed down to kind of show the process of the characters and like explaining the physics and the dynamics of the sword fights. So that's kind of how a lot of fights are done in Kenshin, along with having some like intense back and forths. And I think that this episode covered both of those very, very well, where when Kenshin first arrives, he has a sword fight with Janae, and, the animation is very flashy. There's a lot of jumps and flips. And then towards the final bit of the confrontation, it slows things down, where it's in Janae's head of thinking about how he's going to counter this attack and everything. So those are like the 2 ways that Kenshin does sword fightings, and this one really combines it together. But if you, took a step back and you looked at like the time scale that happened in universe, like in the episode itself, all of this happens in the span of like 3 minutes. You know what I mean? Like an entire episode happens in that time span. So that's kind of how it does fights, but it doesn't take away the importance of Janae in this series, and especially what he means for Kenshin and in this moment. And this is something that I was really hoping that this anime would capture and really, really pull on the heartstrings for, and really settle you into kind of the mind state, I guess, of these characters in this moment and what it means. Because Kenshin, at this point in the series, we're not really supposed to know a whole lot of detail about what happened in his history. We know that he was an assassin. He was a Hitokiri. He fought in the war. It was pretty much because of Kenshin's existence on the side of the imperialists that he brought in a new era of Japan. But we know that he killed a lot of people. And at one point, he decided to give up killing. He also got a reverse blade sword to try to ensure that, so he doesn't have a sword that's designed for killing anymore, and he became a wanderer. Now, we don't really know the reasons why, but it was a drastic shift in Kenshin's mental state and who he is as a person and what he wanted to do and what he wanted to accomplish. Here in this situation, Janae has specifically captured Kaoru, somebody that he believes Kenshin cares a lot about, and he's correct, in order to kind of bring that viciousness back out of him, to bring that Hitokiri side back out. The anime adds a quick anime-only scene that's not in the manga, They might have touched, I think they did touch on it a little bit in the 90s, but they didn't show Kenshin and Janae meeting each other, where it shows the flashback of Kenshin as Batosai just laying waste to a group of people in the Shinsengumi, which was an opposing force at the time. We'll get more into them at some point, but Janae was part of the Shinsengumi, right? And he saw Kenshin firsthand of what he could do and what he was capable of, and that's the version of Kenshin that he wants to fight. And he does successfully bring that version out by doing this. We talked about how in the last episode, the Shino Ippo, his power that he has is something that, you could sort of attribute to something in real life, but then exaggerate it to the point of, of Kenshin dynamics in the anime, where it's sort of like, because he is such a stone cold killer and because he is so determined and precise and has that reputation, when he looks you in the eye, if you're like a weaker person than he is, or you're just not up to par, you're not up to his level, it literally can like freeze you in fear to the point where in anime, they're literally frozen. But he does a version of the Shino Ippo on Kaoru that's even more exaggerated than that, where it literally freezes her lungs from pumping. So she is like going to suffocate and die. And he tells Kenshin the only way to stop this is if she overcomes it herself or the person that initiated the spell dies. And this is why this moment is super important. Regardless of how cheesy you might think that would be, right? The spell itself. The importance is Kenshin's willingness to shift back into Batosai mode to kill Janae. Because there is no time to consider anything, and this is why it's important. Kenshin has had this vow to kill, assumingly he hasn't killed anybody for 10 years, but when he is in this position where Kaoru, who he cares about deeply, there might be a bit of a love story brewing, but they're not together yet, but he still cares about her very deeply. She's a good person. She's an innocent person. She's trying to do what's right in the world. She doesn't deserve this whatsoever. And there's no time to think about it. Because if your lungs aren't working, if you're not breathing, you've got like a minute or two to live, right? And without even considering, anything else, Kenshin just snaps into Batosai mode and decides, if that is the only way to save Kaoru, I am going to kill you. And that's it. So Kenshin is proving in this moment that he is willing to kill again. He is willing to delve back into that Hitokiri, Batosai self if the situation is that dire. There is no alternative. It's either let this mass murdering psychopath live and Kaoru dies, or kill the mass murdering psychopath and save Kaoru. And for Kenshin, it's not even a question. But that also plays into the things that Janae says to him at the end of the episode. But I'll get to that, I guess, in a moment. So this fight ensues, and Janae is like, all right, I got this guy where I want him. So he unlocks his ultimate potential by doing the Shino Ippo on himself, which again, if you want to, try to explain it, it's basically like sort of like a hypnotism, right? To bring out his full potential. So you could see it you could say it boosts his adrenaline. You could say it boosts his confidence and, maybe quells his fear. It just boosts him up. It gives him a boost. It's not like, he's not powering up like Dragon Ball Z, making his muscles bigger that way. It's pretty much just it's just like a representation of unlocking his potential. I'm going maximum, I'm going maximum, man. I'm going hardcore, going 100% here. It's like you just took 3 shots of pre-workout at once, right? So he's in that mode, and I love that Kenshin does not give a fuck. This is one thing you'll see about Kenshin when he gets serious, is he doesn't give a shit. It doesn't matter what you do or how you try to build yourself up or you explaining your big ultimate attack. When it cuts back to Kenshin, he's like, I said I'm gonna kill you, so I'm gonna fucking kill you. There's just no, I love how there's no response. He does not care. He's not intimidated. He's not taken aback. There's no cutaway of the anime face of him being oh, he's awakening his potential. It's just Kenshin's I already said I was gonna kill you. Nothing, man, nothing. It just reminds me of how crazy this moment is, man. Especially when you consider Kenshin as a character in full context. It's crazy. So then they have another great moment. We are introduced to Kenshin's signature attack. Now, a bunch of anime characters have a bunch of signature attacks, right? Goku's got the Kamehameha, Yusuke's got the Spirit Gun. Kenshin has the Bato Jutsu, which is how he got his nickname of Batosai, right? Where he just basically draws the blade at such an incredibly fast speed that it insta-kills you in like one hit. It's just a very, very super fast sword draw. That's basically all it is. It's as simple as you can get, but because it's so fast and he can put so much energy into it, it just instantly kills his opponent, right? The only way to counter it is, well, you could try to parry it or you could try to dodge it, right? That's really all you can do. And if you can't do those, you're going to die. So Janae decides he's going to try to dodge it, right? So he comes forward, Kenshin swings, and he explains, like, because he's using a reverse blade sword, the sword is dull instead of sharp. It's going to slow it down a little bit. Just a little bit, with Kenshin, that's still like 0.00001 seconds, but, it's still a little bit. And he draws it. Janae manages to dodge it, and he thinks he has it in the bag. And then Kenshin pulls the fucking Uno reverse card and hits him with the sheath at the same time. From the very beginning, it was not meant to be a single strike. It was meant to be a double. It was meant to be a strike with the sword, strike with the sheath. 2 shots, right? And I really love the sound effect that they chose. Like when Janae, he basically like breaks his arm, like snaps his tendon. The sound effect was brutal. Sounded great. And that was it, man. And then Janae's on the ground, and Kenshin is going to deliver the finishing blow. He's willing to kill him. And this is the moment, man. This is the moment where Kaoru sees this, and she knows the man that she knows. She doesn't know Batosai, right? She doesn't know the killer, the Hitokiri. She knows the kind, passionate man that she's met and that she's hung out with for however many weeks has taken place since the first episode. And the last thing that she wants to see is Kenshin turn back into that murderer, to go backwards in his character development. She doesn't want to see that from him. Not just because that's just not the version of him that she knows, but she knows that he doesn't want that. And the only reason he's doing it is for her, right? And it causes her, on her own, to break free of the Shinoippo. She breaks the spell herself because she has that strength and determination and desire to help Kenshin the same way Kenshin had that for her. It's fucking beautiful, bro. And she breaks it herself in order to stop Kenshin from turning back to the man he was before. And just like, bro, I get fucking emotional. Think about it, man. I remember when I first watched the 90s version of this scene, when I was like, I don't know, 13, 14, and now I'm fucking 20 years older and I'm watching it again and I'm feeling the same way. And I'm like, just she loves him so much and she just breaks the spell by herself. Anyways, so that happens. And then, of course, the finale of the climax of it all is Janae stands back up and he does take himself out, feeling that he would be useless at this point if his arm is broken, and he doesn't want people to find out who hired him. Now, remember, he was still being a Hitokiri. He was being an assassin, and he was taking out these government officials. Why? Someone was hiring him to do that. Somebody from the inside, once again, proving that the government is just fucking corrupt, right? So all that's been happening, on the inside. And then he has this very specific moment of telling Kenshin that, I always remember it from the 90s version because in the English dub, it's a very specific, iconic line that says, a manslayer is a manslayer till the day he dies. He can never be anything else. And this is really important because, he's looking at Kenshin and saw that Kenshin was just now willing to kill him. And so Janae believes that he's won, right? He's basically said, even though he's dying, he lives for this, right? So if he can't sword fight, if he can't kill, then it's, he just Hitokiri, or no, Hayakiri kills himself. Dracula. And so, he believes that that's it. If you, once you've done this, once you've started down this path, when you've become this person, when you've been a murderer, you're going to be a murderer forever. No matter what you do, no matter what you try to become, no matter what life path you go on, you're always going to be that murderer. So Janae believes that he's won in this moment. But Kenshin, I think Kenshin really, really has a hard time thinking about it because Kenshin knows that he would have done it. But at the same time, something happened and Kenshin didn't do it. So it brings in like the moral question of like, is that ultimately Kenshin's fate? Is he just fated to be that manslayer for the rest of his life? Is that what he's always going to be known as? Is that what is going to matter more than anything else he does? Or is there potential for a future of him being and becoming something else? And I can understand that maybe at first glance this seems like just another anime fight scene, but I think that it's a very, very crucial moment for Kenshin's character in wondering his place in everything. Can he really be this Rurouni? Can he be this wanderer? Is it all a lie that he's telling himself? Will he always be Batosai? And Kaoru's overcoming of the Shinoippo in order to protect Kenshin, basically just showing how much both of these characters truly, really care about each other, that she was able to like lift herself up to that level and break that spell on her own in order to save him, to save him from himself, right? So I love this. I love this episode. I thought they did a really good job. Look, man, I mean, I'm always going to prefer the 90s version, but as this series keeps going, I have more and more faith in it. And next, we're going to get into the next little arc segment, which will be a bit longer than the Janae one, and introduce one of the best characters in the series. So I can't wait. Two of the best characters in the series, actually. So I can't wait. So anyways, guys, if you watch this episode, tell me what you thought about it down below. If you're an anime only, if this is your first Kenshin experience, tell me if the scene worked for you the same way that I'm trying to describe. I don't know. I have like 20-year history with this scene, so maybe it means more to me, at this point. But tell me how the scene worked for you if it was your first time. And if you're a long-term Kenshin fan like me, did it bring back great memories? Did it make you remind you why you love this series? Let me know all that down below. Also, guys, if you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I do have a Patreon, channel memberships, merch store, all that linked down below, as well as all the social media links where you can follow me. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll talk to you next time.